Hello, everybody, and welcome into a post-draft lottery episode of the Prospect Corner. As we always do after the draft lottery, got Dayton Reimer here, Peter Baracchini. As always, we are about 10 minutes from the draft lottery finishing up, and the Toronto Maple Leafs end up winning the lottery first overall, even though they didn't have the best odds for it, and the Canucks did. As I've been talking about most of the time in Prospect Corner, they didn't end up the first overall pick. They didn't end up with the second overall pick. Dropped to third, like everyone in the Canucks fan base was actually anticipating. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but that's how the lottery balls kind of came out. So I'll start with you, Peter, because you are, of course, Maple Leafs writer. I mean, were you anticipating this? I know you're saying fifth. Top five pick is great. You don't have to give it to the Boston Bruins, but first overall.
Honestly, best case scenario, I just wanted the top five pick secured. That was it. It didn't matter if it was first. It didn't matter if it was second. I just wanted that top five pick just so we wouldn't have to give it to the Bruins because of the conditions afterwards. What happened next year, the year after that, it was just too complicated. And yeah, I don't know really what Brad Treliving was doing about that pick, but this is literally best case scenario. You're in the top five, but you also get the first overall pick to select Gavin McKenna. And this is kind of like really a good luck sense for the Maple Leafs because you lost a highly skilled playmaker in Mitch Marner before this season. You had to give him up. You only got Nick Wall in return. Yeah, you had a bad season. Now you have a legitimate elite level playmaker that could go alongside an Austin Matthews. Yeah, he's probably left wing. He'll probably benefit on that. And then you maybe move Matthew Nyes down to the second line if that's the case. And I would probably jump in the gun here a little bit in terms of the Maple Leafs actually selecting McKenna, but it kind of feels like he's the top guy right now. It's not for sure a lock, but it feels like he's more likely to go than Ivar Stenberg at this point. I would have been happy if it was just like 5 or even second overall because that was the highest at the Maple Leafs, or the second highest that they could go. First overall was the highest. They couldn't go third. They couldn't go fourth. Considering how there's been a bit of a circus in terms of the media with the hiring of John Chaika as the GM. This is like one big positive and one big, sigh of relief that the fan base and the team needed to try and turn this into a positive spin right now. Cause it's just been a lot of negativity overall on the news cycle, you name it. But yeah, this is great moment for the Maple Leafs and 10 years since we've drafted Austin Matthews. So 10 years later, we draft Gavin McKenna or potentially draft Gavin McKenna. To me, everything's coming full circle right now because he is the guy that has a lot of high-end potential and skill and really could quell the nerves of Leaf Nation and even the fan base as well.
Well, I mean, it's funny because the last time the Canucks had the best odds of a first overall pick, weren't last, but they had some good odds to get the first overall pick. Guess who got the first overall pick in that year too? The Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's just again, maybe I should have been expecting this for the Canucks, but they dropped to third. I mean, it's not horrible. I mean, Dayton, looking at it, sounds like Sharks get second overall. They had picked Michael Misa not that long ago, second overall. They get the second overall pick again. Where do you see this going? Because, I mean, we'll talk way more about it, but what are your reaction to that? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be Ivar Stenberg, Gavin McKenna gone by the third pick.
It's true. It could be a very strange draft now, especially, after the new GM hire in Toronto. I think that could throw actually a wrench in things, especially with Matt Sundin taking a prominent role, who was a first overall Swede. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. And that then could McKenna drop to the Sharks? Or are the Sharks going to look at adding another high-end defenseman like Chase Reed? That's entirely possible. They do have some very good defensemen. Like we're looking at Sam Dickinson, Shakir Mukhamadullin. Luka Cagnoni has been incredible. They've still got Matthias Havlid, Leo Solon-Wallenius. There's some good depth there. But does anyone bring the same sort of potential, other than maybe Dickinson, as a Chase Reed, who would almost certainly be a top pairing defenseman for them. Does he have a right shot? I can't remember right now. Not sure. He might be a left shot, Chase Reed.
I believe he's right.
He is.
I can never.
He is a right.
He's a right. Okay, so that would be huge. Again, alongside someone like Sam Dickinson, who I believe is a left. Yeah, that fantastic pairing, I think. So that's going to be tough to pass up, and then that leaves Vancouver with, unfortunately, like the third option of those three. But it could end up being someone like Ivar Stenberg if the balls fall. It could even be someone like Gavin McKenna. Honestly, if the way things shake out, the way, like, if you look at it in the most chaotic fashion, which I like to, it's fun. I think there is an actual possibility that McKenna could fall to third.
I mean, that would be like the dream for the Canucks right now, for Canucks fans at least, because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of the fan base that are a little bit miffed about it, but although, like I said, a lot of the fan base were anticipating this, because if you look at the odds, yes, they had the best odds of first overall, but they also had best odds of dropping to 3 as well when you're looking at it all. But this draft lottery, there's always surprises, it seems. I think there was just I think it was a 2024 draft. There was nothing that changed. Everything stayed the same. But this is the second straight draft where, I mean, no one really jumped. I mean, the Maple Leafs still had a decent chance of getting first, while like the Islanders jumped from they jumped 11 spots to first. So there wasn't a dramatic one where you're like, oh my gosh, this team jumped so far. But yeah, now the discussion is going to be interesting to see where these guys, who's going to get picked first, who's going to be the top 3. Because like we said, when we were talking about first overall pick, who's going to get first, who's going to be selected first, it depends on the team that's going to be first overall. Now it's the Maple Leafs. Peter, I know you said, I mean, it's McKenna, but is it definitely McKenna at this point?
Yeah, and you know what? I had this, notion in my head going back and forth in my rankings. It's always been Gavin McKenna, Ivar Stenberg, going back and forth 1-2 as to who's the top overall. It's not like last year where you knew it was going to be Matthew Schaefer, especially in the second half in March, April, where you got that sense that Schaefer was going to be the talk. And look at what he did this season. Definitely lived up to that first overall, expectations. This year, it feels like, yes, the smart thing to do, or the obvious thing to do, is to take that highly skilled playmaker in Gavin McKenna, but you can't just overlook what Ivar Stenberg did as an 18-year-old in this SHL, and being one of the top draft eligible point producers in their draft year in that league, gaining ground on the Sedin twins. That to me is something that you really can't look over. And as I mentioned in his profile, and even all the time and time again with my rankings, he has a lot of pro ready qualities that could make him an NHLer next season. Gavin McKenna could probably make that jump, but there's that possibility that maybe he doesn't want to go. Maybe he wants to go back another year. Possibility as well. But it still feels like with the skill level and the lead playmaking, the hands, Gavin McKenna could probably make the roster. But, and I'm saying but a lot because there's a lot of what if scenarios right now. Yes, it does feel like McKenna should be that guy, but I still would not count out Ivar Stenberg because of what he's able to do. And I think the final note on who the Maple Leafs could decide who they're going to pick will come down to that World Hockey Championship with Ivar Stenberg playing for Team Sweden right there. I think that will have a big influence, because I remember in that 2016 where it was both like Patrick Laine and Austin Matthews playing at a tournament as draft eligible players. Matthews, obviously, he had a great season. He stood out of that tournament and the Maple Leafs selected him. McKenna's not going to the World Hockey Championship. I think he just wanted to rest, train, get ready for the combine, and that's absolutely fine. He's preparing for what lies ahead. but so is Ivar Stenberg. And if he has a good tournament, I think this will be an even more difficult conversation than it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I mean, these two guys, I mean, do you think the Maple Leafs go off the board and pick a defenseman, or is it, I mean, you never know, right? With this new management, you're really not sure.
Yeah. I mean, going. I would not galaxy brain that. I think if the Maple Leafs had the second overall pick or the fifth, I definitely think they would have taken a defenseman. And I think they still need that. But to pass up those two players in McKenna or Stenberg, it really is hard to do so. I think they need to be 100% or have a case and make a case that 100% that Chase Reed is going to be that high-end puck-moving 60-point defender at the next level. And, you know, he looks fantastic in the Sioux, in the OHL. But you kind of get a sense of where McKenna and Stenberg are projected. You still have that with Reed, but I feel like, yes, it's Stenberg and McKenna, but there's also still a bit of a gap afterwards. Not a big one, but there's still a lot of players that could still challenge. And maybe the Maple Leafs do look at Chase Reed as a possibility for first overall. I don't see it, considering what both McKenna and Stenberg did. But it is an interesting debate. I will say that, but I still think it ultimately comes down to McKenna one, and if Stenberg has that good tournament against senior competition again, you have to consider that as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, after the Maple Leafs, the Sharks, it's not a guarantee. Like say, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be Stenberg or McKenna or whoever ends up being still available. Is that they need defensemen, and I mean, they're going to be looking at. There's a lot of defensemen they could pick from. So, like you said, Dayton. So, there could be an interesting thing where the Sharks kind of go at that 2 spot, and then the Canucks. I guess it'll just come down to who's still left after that, because now Caleb Malholter is now a bigger possibility at third because of all the scouting that they have done on him. If both McKenna and Stenberg are gone, I say Caleb Malholter is the guy. Although there's been talk about defensemen going for the Canucks as well, looking at a guy like Chase Reed if he's still there, Keen Verhoff. So, I mean, I don't think the Canucks need as much of a defenseman like that. I think they need forwards, but we'll see how it goes. And now that potentially they're not going to have a shot at Stenberg or McKenna there. All right. Well, we'll have a lot more to talk about now on a future episode of Prospect Corner. We'll do our first post-lottery mock draft after this. So thanks, Dayton. Thanks, Peter, for coming on, reacting to the draft lottery. Lots more fun to come now that we know the draft order, at least the top 16. Once the playoffs are over, we'll know the rest. But we know what is going to be for the lottery picks after this. So thanks, and make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We got great articles already streaming out because of the draft lottery. So check those out. And then lots more target pieces. A lot of that's going to be coming now that a lot of these teams know their picks. So lots of content to look at. And all of our draft profiles, lots of them already out there. We're closing in at 100, but check all that out, and the draft guide as well. But until our next full episode, we will see you next time.